So today is the 13th of the month of Av. We're just coming after the 9 days of mourning, three weeks of mourning, which are then more intense during the 9 days, starting from the beginning of the month of Av until the 9th of Av, which is the day when the temple was destroyed, both the first temple and the second temple. And these are very sad days in the Jewish calendar, especially the 9th of Av. It's kind of the saddest day on the Jewish calendar. On the contrast, there is the Talmud and the Mishnah, actually, at the end of the tractate of Tainus, which talks about fasts and talks about the reasons for the 9th of Av, talks about the reasons for the 17th of Av, the 17th of Tammuz, which is 3 weeks before the 9th of Av, which is also a fast day. The Mishnah tells us right at the end of the tractate that there were no loihayo yamim tovim li Yisrael kachamisha asa ba'avak yom kippurim. There was the greatest festivals. Welcome, Noga. The greatest festivals on the Jewish calendar are the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur.
15th of Av.
Lo hayu yomim tovim li Yisrael kachamisha asar ba'av ukayom kippurim. This is the end of the tractate of Tainus in the Mishnah, and it's elaborated on at length in both the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud. This is where the Mishnah goes into great description of what would take place in Israel on the 15th of Av, how the girls would go out to the vineyards and they would borrow white clothing from each other, and they would dance and they would say various verses from the Torah. And really it was a day of matchmaking when people would choose to come together.
Right. The holiday of love, it's called.
The holiday of love.
Oh.
So I think that's the modern Israel today is known as the holiday of love, because I mean it's a very the whole description at the end of Tainus is very romantic.
Yes.
What are the reasons for this special day? What are the reasons for this day being such a joyous day? Yom Kippur. It says actually in the Mishnah itself, why is Yom Kippur such a happy day? Because it's the day of forgiveness for the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
So the day when God finally forgave the Jewish people for the sin of the golden calf after 3 times of Moses going up and down the mountain. It's a day of atonement. Yes, it's a day that we take very seriously. It's a day of fasting, a day of prayer, a solemn day, but that's not a contradiction to it being a day of deep happiness and joy that Hashem is forgiving us, and that we are given the opportunities to atone for ourselves through fasting, through refining ourselves, through doing the harder, more intense work, which sometimes it's not necessarily easy. Life is not supposed to be easy, but it's the fact that we have hope and the fact that Hashem is helping us and taking care of us. The 15th of Av seems to be random. It doesn't, that seems to be a random day of joy. Why was it specifically this day that was chosen for the day of the day of matchmaking? Why is it such a special day? Why is it the biggest holiday in the Jewish calendar?
Maybe it's because the moon is there's a full moon and it's after Tisha B'Av and everybody is rejoicing.
Very good. You're right onto something. But the thing with that is that most of the Jewish holidays are on the full moon, right?
Yeah.
So Sukkot is on the 15th of Tishrei, and Passover is on the 15th of Nisan. And Purim is on the 15th of Adar.
Right.
And Tu B'Shvat is on the 15th of Shvat.
Right.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Well, they say that there's four Rosh Hashanah in the Jewish calendar, right? There's Rosh Hashanah for everybody. There's on Tishrei. There's Rosh Hashanah for Passover, and Tu B'Shvat, the Rosh Hashanah for the trees, the birthday of the trees. Then there's Passover. What's the fourth one? Is the fourth one Tu B'Av?
The fourth one I think is I don't even remember. Maybe the month beginning of Elul. It's for animals or for plants. I don't even remember.
The one for the plants is on Tu B'Shvat.
So there's trees and there's grain. It's different. I don't know if it's exactly the same. And I don't want to get too much off topic, because this is Tu B'Shvat is in a few months from now. But the 15th of Av, you're right, is in a full moon, and you actually mentioned that it's coming after Tisha B'Av, and that's what we're going to focus on today.
Yeah.
The Talmud, we'll jump straight into the piece of the Talmud that I sent out actually by email, and I could share the screen if it's if you like.
I have it in
Yeah,
front of me, so
so-
I don't need a screen share. Yeah. You
Okay,
can,
great.
you can just divide it up on your monitor.
I don't know how to do that. I'm just using my phone.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to see. Hi Shira, welcome. Yeah, that's fine. Please do what's best. We're going to share. I know there's a way to share part of the screen. I just want to share part of the screen. So
Okay.
I think
There we are.
Oh, that's good.
you got it. You see me?
Yeah.
Okay, you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Oh, you have the Hebrew here. Good. I like that.
Okay, we're not going to get into great length into all the different
I
reasons.
know, but at least I can read it.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
perfect. Okay, where is it? Where's it gone? I had it before.
You keep
Just missed-
moving it around.
I'm looking to find the beginning of it. Give me a second, please. Oh, here we go. Okay. So Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, Lo hayu yamim tovim liYisrael kachamisha asar b'av u'yom Kippurim. There were no happy days as happy for the Jewish people as the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur. So the Talmud says as follows. We're gonna let's read it like a piece of Talmud, like they read it in yeshiva. Okay, so Bishlama Yom Kippurim mishum de'isbei slicha mechila. We understand why Yom Kippur, because it's the day of forgiveness and atonement. Yom Shenitnu Bo Luchot Acharot, the day when God gave us the last pair of the Luchot, of the tablets. Ela Tetvav Ba'av Mahi. What is the celebration of the 15th of Av? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Yom Shehu Tush Vatim Lavod Zeh Bazeh. This is the first of 6 reasons that the Talmud is going to give. The first reason is that this is the day that the tribes were permitted to enter one another's tribe by intermarriage. So it was initially prohibited to intermarry between tribes, so as to keep each plot of land within the portion of the tribe that originally inherited it. This halacha was instituted by the Torah in the wake of the complaint of the relatives of the daughters of Salafchad in the end of the book of Numbers, who were worried that if these women married men from other tribes, the inheritance of Salafchad would be lost from his tribe. Yeah?
Right.
Is everyone with me? I don't see you. I just see my screen. So
Yeah, but why? But that's for the daughters of Tzlofchad. But what about other women?
later in the end of Maseh, so the family of Salafchad came and complained, and they said it's not whenever this is going to happen.
No, I remember we talked about the daughters of Tzlofchad, but other women that their fathers that they did have brothers, that wasn't an issue for them. So why couldn't they marry in other tribes?
It's a good question. Maybe it didn't apply in those cases. Maybe it only applied to ones who didn't have brothers. It's a great question.
Right, but maybe these are the first women who came to Moshe with their problem. Maybe the others just were quiet.
The others were married already by then. You have to remember that many of the Jews they hadn't married, and that's an interesting thing why they hadn't married, and they were much older. But most of the other girls from other tribes, as far as we know, were married were married, and there was no such rule beforehand. So they probably were already intermarried. And it happened specifically with the daughters of Salafchad who didn't have brothers. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next piece. See the screen still?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna skip the explanation. Why did they expand? So let's leave this for a second because we're gonna take time away from what we want to focus on.
Okay.
Second reason. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Nachman. So Rav Yosef in the name of Rav Nachman says, Yom Shehutar Shevet Binyamin Lavo Bakahal. This is a very unpleasant story. We're not going to get into the details of it. If you know the prophets, you know all the details, but it's beyond the scope of today's class. That this is the day in which the tribe of Benjamin were permitted to enter the congregation of the Jewish people after the tragic incident of Giva, for which the tribe of Benjamin were blamed. The other tribes ostracized them. They took an oath to prohibit themselves from marrying a member of the tribe of Benjamin.
Wow.
So this was a very terrible story that happened where basically something very terrible happened, that the tribe of Benjamin did a terrible act of killing raping and killing someone, and then the rest of the tribes basically ostracized them. First of all, they went to war with them and they killed many of the members of Binyamin, and then they ostracized them and they wouldn't allow anyone to marry into their tribe. And at this point, basically, the Binyamin was in the fear. The tribe of Binyamin was at fear of being extinct because they weren't able to marry anyone, and there was basically these boys from the tribe of Benjamin that were stuck without enough women to marry them, and they would have basically lost their tribe. So this is the day when Benjamin was allowed to remarry, was allowed to come back into the tribes. Okay. Let's reason number 3. Yeah? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amar Rabba bar bar Chana Amar Yochanan. This is the next reason. Rabba bar bar Chana says in the name of Yochanan, Yom shekalu bo metei midbar. This is the day, this is what you mentioned before about the moon. We'll talk about that in a second. This is the day on which the deaths of the Jews in the wilderness ceased. And this is also when God started to speak to Moses. For the first time, God hadn't spoken directly to Moses in 40 years. And after this incident, when basically what happened was, after the story of the spies, so God decreed that any man who reaches the age 60 in the desert is going to die, and the Jewish people are going to stay in the desert for 40 years. So basically, anybody who was 20 and onwards was not going to make it into the land of Israel because they're going to reach 60 before the end of the 40th year, and they are going to die in the desert. Part of what they would do, and this speaks about this, I believe, in the Talmud, is that they would actually dig graves for themselves. They knew on the 9th of Av, which was the anniversary of this terrible decree when the spies came back. This is also the day when the temple was later destroyed. This is the day when they were going to die. So they would actually go into the ground, they would get themselves ready. They knew exactly when they were going to pass. The final year, so the final year of the 40th year, somehow they had believed, I guess the ones who had been turning 60 that year thought they weren't going to make it into Israel either. And they dug graves for themselves and they went down into the ground. This is just a few months before they came into Israel the following year. And they dug graves for themselves. They went into the ground on the 9th of Av, and they waited, and they waited, and they waited. We spoke about this last week, I think. Yeah, right? Or we spoke about it.
15th of Av.
They waited until the 15th of Av. Now, they waited for a few days, and they came out, but they weren't sure how long they had waited for. So maybe they're just miscalculating. Maybe the day hasn't finished yet. And they waited, and then when they came out of the ground on the 15th of Av and they saw the full moon, okay, this is past. 9th of Av is for sure past. It's a full moon. So God is not making this decree against us. We are going to make it into the land of Israel. It's obviously a day of profound joy for these people, for this whole age group of people that thought they weren't going to go into Israel. And this is also when God had, so to speak, been upset with the Jewish people, and he hadn't spoken to Moses 40 years directly in the way that Moses had the transmission beforehand, 39 years. And at this point, God spoke to Moses again with that very deep transmission. So this is the third reason. Third or fourth? I think third.
So you know that most people didn't know how old they were anyway.
Why not?
Because who paid attention? They didn't write it down. They didn't have dates.
Is that a fact? I mean, I know that our grandparents, that generation, it wasn't so common for people to celebrate birthdays. Yeah, I don't know about in times of the desert. Those times it was very important to know because there's all these details about age, right? If you turn 20, you go into work at the temple, you go to war, and when you get counted, counting was a whole thing. Right? So there were specific things about ages. Even if they didn't know their birthday, they knew that year they were turning 60.
They knew kind of, I think.
Yeah. Okay. The fourth reason, Ula. Ula said, Ula Amar Yom Shebitel Hoshea ben Ela Prustiyot Shehoshiv Yeravam ben Nevat al Hadurachim Shelo Yalu Yisrael Leregel. This is the day when Hoshea, the son of Ela, cancelled the guards that Yeravam, son of Nevat, placed on the roads so the Jews would not be able to ascend to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage holidays.
What is
So
proceedings?
Prosidiot means over here. It means guards.
Uh-huh.
Pustiot. It's maybe more of an Aramaic kind of word.
Yeah, I don't know that word.
Means guard. So basically, Jeroboam ben Nevat, who was a very wicked king, tried to ban the Jewish people from going to the pilgrimage, which was a very big part of being Jewish in the times of Temple. And on this day, the people weren't able to go. They blocked off the roads from other parts of Israel. On this day, Hoshea ben Allah took off the guards, defeated Yerovam, I guess, or defeated those people. I don't know the details, and they were now allowed to be able to go to Israel again.
Mhm.
Now we're going to move on to the next page, Daf Lamed Aleph, the final page of this tractate. Rabbi Masna Amma. Rabbi Matna says, Yom Shenitnu Haruge Beita Likfura. This is the day when the slain of Beita were brought to burial. Several years after the Battle of Beita. I believe this is the battle with Bar Kokhba, who claimed to be the Messiah, and the Jewish, they started the revolution against the Romans after the destruction of the temple. And in Beitar, the Romans defeated Jewish people and slaughtered many of them, or all of them, whoever was there at the time. And they banned from the Jewish people to bury their dead.
Right.
So their bodies lied on the fields of Beitar and disintegrated, and the bones were remained. And it was a very, very tragic event that happened where many Jewish people were killed. This is also one of the things that happened on Tisha B'Av, by the way. So the 9th of Av, the destruction of the temples, the day when the Jewish people were banned entry into Israel for 40 years, and the day when they killed the people of Beitar. And on this day, they were many years later, or a few years later, they were allowed to bury their dead. So they were given permission to bury their dead.
It's good that everything happened on Tisha B'Av, so we don't have to have so many days of mourning. We can do it all in one day.
Exactly. And now, but we also have they could have separated the holidays onto different days also, but it's all in one day also. 15th of Av is the reason for all of these celebrations, right? Welcome, David. You're up in Napa, I see.
Yep, in Sonoma.
Sonoma, yeah.
Fields.
Okay. Yeah, I see the background. Rabba and Rav Yosef. Now this is the so we just named 5 reasons, right? Let's just sum up the reason for the reason number 1, they were allowed to marry within the different tribes, were allowed to intermarry. Number 2, Benjamin was allowed to marry into the tribes. Number 3, what's number 3? Well, the guards being taken out.
3 is the death of the Jews in the wilderness ceased.
Oh, the death of the Jews in the wilderness ceased. Number 4, the guards blocking the pilgrimage were removed. Number 5, the people of Beitar were allowed to be buried. And now the Talmud ends off with the most peculiar, weird ending of another reason why this is a day of celebration. This is what we're going to elaborate on. We'll have a few minutes. We have 15-20 minutes left after this to talk about specifically focusing on this. Rabba and Rav Yosef both said, the Amri Tarvada, they both said, Yom Shapasku Milichros Eitzim Lamaracha. This is a day on which they stopped chopping down trees for the arrangement of wood to be burnt on the altar. So every year they needed a lot of wood to be able to offer the sacrifices on the altar in the temple. They needed wood. And every year there was a period of time, starting from Passover, I believe, when different families from the tribes had the special merit of cutting down the wood from the forests and bringing it to the temple to be used for sacrifices for the rest of the year. This is the day when they stopped cutting. Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol says, from this day onward, the summer ends and the sun becomes weaker. It's not as hot anymore. They would no longer cut the wood for the sacrifices because the wood was was moist. It wasn't dry anymore. In order for it to be able to be properly burnt and used for the sacrifices, they had to be very dry. Once the sun started the heat wasn't as strong, wasn't as intense. So now they wouldn't no longer cut off the wood because it wouldn't be good wood for the sacrifices. So this is the day when they had to conclude all the cutting of the wood, which would last them all the way until the next Passover. There was a special chamber in the temple which was used to keep the wood for the sacrifices, both sacrifices of individuals and communal. People would not bring their own wood for their sacrifices of atonement or whatever it was. They would use wood that was designated in the temple from this cutting that would take place before the 15th of Av.
But this happened, excuse me, this happened just once, right?
No, this happened every year in the temple.
Oh, every year they would stop cutting wood on the 15th.
For hundreds of years. Yeah, this was a
Okay.
day. There was a
Okay.
set days each year when they would cut the wood.
Which tells you that in those years, it wasn't so hot from then on. Not like now that it continues to be really hot and dry in Israel all the way to, I don't know, September.
Maybe the heat is, yeah. Does it get any colder? Yeah. Does it? Oh, it stays as hot.
It's just really hot.
Yeah. Let's look at. So then we have one more piece over here. Amar Rabbi, this is so we just said. So this is the day when they would. Rabbi Elazar says the day when they would stop cutting. All these rabbis say it's the day when they stopped cutting the wood, and they would no longer use it for the sacrifices. Amar Rabbi Menashe says the Karole Yom Tavar Mago. This day had a special name. It was called the day of the breaking of the axes. As from this day onwards, or from not the axes. What's this word? The scythe.
Scythe.
Scythe. Yes. The special saw that was used for cutting the wood. As from this day onward, no more trees were cut down, and therefore it was celebration for the trees. Okay. Well, that's that piece that they just wrote over there. It's a celebration for the trees. That was added in by whoever made this translation for this piece of Talmud, and we're gonna actually see what is the reason for this celebration. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen now so I can see all of you.
So that's 6 reasons.
6 reasons, yes. The interesting thing is that the last reason is brought by a number of different people. So it seems to be that this is, and it's the final reason. So it seems to be that this is this is like one of the main reasons for the celebration. And why is it? What is the big deal that they stopped cutting down wood on this day? I mean, what exactly is the celebration? If anything, the fact that the sun is no longer strong and the nature that they need in order to be the use of nature to be able to use the wood and everything else was no longer there, seems to be more of a day of not a happy day, a day when we're no longer able to cut the wood. Right?
It's very happy because that means that winter is coming and they're going to put seeds in the ground and there's going to be rain and it's an agricultural.
Winter is not coming yet. It's fall. Winter's going to be. It's going to be a while. It's going to be a while till winter comes.
Wait, it's summer. It's not even fall. It's
right. Summer. Exactly. It's summer. The rain. Remember, the rain is going to start in Cheshvan. According to the Jewish tradition, we pray for rain in Sukkot, and then when they finish coming back, this is still far away from rain. Here we're talking about the heat is not as strong, and they're no longer able to cut the wood. And this is a day of great celebration. And all of the commentaries struggle to find what is the reason for this celebration. Why is it a reason that we should consider the 15th of Av to be the biggest holiday? Not just the holiday, a holiday. To be one of the biggest holidays on par with Yom Kippur. And even more so, Rabbi Menashe says, they have a special name. And a very odd name. What's the name? The name when they would break the tools that they would use to cut the wood. Which is, I mean, would they actually break the tool? Would they actually break them? You're saying no, but there's different opinions on that. There are some opinions that say that they would actually. Most of the opinions say that they just wouldn't use them anymore. So they called it the day of the breaking of the axis, or the day of the breakings of the scythes. But Rashi and I think Rashbam, who's Rashi's grandson, they say that this is the day they would actually have a ceremony. I don't know if it was a ceremony. They would actually break the scythes, which is, I mean, there's a law in the Torah, Bal Tashchit. You're not allowed to destroy things. Right. Things are good use. You don't destroy them. So there must have been something very symbolic in this.
So they would break just one scythe, you mean? Probably. I mean, it's not like they're going to run down to the corner Ace Hardware and buy another one. Yeah.
That's what it says. It says that one of the things the rabbi says is that they would get rusty. It needed to be really good for the following year, so they would anyways use a new one each year. According to this is all explanations. These are all different ways of you have to remember that there are hundreds of commentaries that are trying to explain these pieces of the Talmud. They start off with Rashi and Tosfot and the Rashbam and the Rambam, others, and then many more Achronim, who are the ones who came later in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, that are elaborating on all these words and all looking to find understanding in this. But this is a very odd piece. In general, all of the celebrations, the reasons that we celebrate the 15th of Av, are all because a decree against the Jewish people was removed, was taken away, like the guards that were blocking the pilgrimage, like the people that weren't, like the dead that weren't allowed to be buried, or because because of let's say intermarriage, that the tribes weren't allowed to marry weren't allowed to marry Benjamin. But this is different.
That's also, the intermarriage is also important, not just for Benjamin, it's also important for all the tribes, so that they have a mixture of genes.
Yeah, that's what it says in the first reason, right?
Yep.
So
is the question, Rabbi, that you're still trying to raise is why is stopping cutting trees a big deal?
yes,
So it seems to me you had another holiday not that long ago where we were honoring trees.
Right, Tu B'Shvat.
So cutting trees is killing the trees. It's not honoring them. And yes, it's for a holy purpose, but if we no longer have that purpose and we can let the trees live, there seems to be something good about that. All life that can be allowed to live, if it's not being raised to the divine, seems like a good thing. So it doesn't seem strange to me. It seems like stopping killing trees, cutting them down.
It's
is
good
a reason to celebrate.
It's good agriculture management. I mean, it gives the trees a chance to grow also.
Well, we give the fields a year every 7 years to
Right.
Good point.
recuperate,
Right.
and we do that every 50 years. So it doesn't seem celebrating not cutting down trees seems like a normal thing.
And there's less labor for us. We're celebrating all the tree cutters can now do something else.
yes, I would
For the year.
differ with that point of what you're saying, Robin, because remember, because it actually speaks about the big days of celebration that they would make when they had the opportunity to cut down the trees. It was like a special merit for certain families. They were the ones who were given it was like a mitzvah, a very big mitzvah that they were able to do. The whole cutting the trees was for a very great mitzvah. So what you're saying,
But that was only the mitzvah, was you were supplying it for the temple. The temple no longer needs it. So there's a mitzvah to stop. And the stop is now allowing the trees. So I don't I don't really see, maybe I'm missing something, but it doesn't seem like an anomaly to me. It seems normal.
Right.
That you would have a mitzvah to cut trees for the temple. And when the temple doesn't need it, why wouldn't it be a mitzvah to not cut trees for no reason?
okay, there's another reason that it's a good reason.
It's the Baal Tashchit that you were saying before.
The Baal Tashchit, on the other hand, they're breaking the scythes, so there's
Yeah,
other
it fits.
happening,
It fits that, not to ruin.
not the ruin. Right. So one of the reasons that he brings over here is that they would celebrate concluding the mitzvah. So we celebrate Yom Simchas Torah, right? We finished the reading of the Torah, so they concluded the mitzvah. But what the Rebbe is asking over here, is the same question would apply on what you're saying, David, is this is the day which is the greatest holiday on the Jewish calendar. So it's a little bit, it seems a little bit taken out of proportion, a little bit exaggerated, that we're going to celebrate the fact that they no longer have to cut the trees and therefore the trees are able to be preserved and everything else. We should make the biggest holiday on the Jewish calendar. So let's look a little bit more into.
But just a second, it's not just the trees that's the reason for the biggest holiday, right? I thought that you're going through a whole litany of
You
things.
gave
So
us a whole list.
yeah, so I still don't understand the question. I mean, I'm still confused why we're questioning it in this way. There's something I'm just not getting.
What we're going to find in this reason specifically. So each reason is enough for itself to be a big holiday. In other words, we don't say, oh, we have all this, we could throw so many more reasons into the batch. So this is worth more than other holidays. Each holiday has its quality, has its unique properties, and each rabbi, each sage, and in this case a few sages, will give their reasons, and those reasons have to suffice to bring out why it was such a great day. So specifically in this, there is a very great purpose and a great meaning, and it's partly connected with what you're saying. All of these things that happened on the 15th of Av are countering the reason. It's really like a big Yerida, Sorach Aliyah. We go down, just like the moon also, right? The moon gets small in order to then get big again. The downfall, or what seems like the curse or the challenge, in order to come back up much higher and much greater afterwards. We spoke about this last week with the journeys and the camping, the Egypts. So in this case, we have this day of Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is a very, very sad day. And there are many things that happen on Tisha B'Av. Different things that happened.
It's good that they all fell on Tisha B'Av.
Right. So all these things that happen on Tisha B'Av, which are all sad. And some of them are connected with not being able to come into the land of Israel. So they were blocked entering into Israel, and we see that afterwards when they took up, so the Jewish people not being able to go into Israel for 40 years, and then that being nullified, that is directly connected. Those two things are directly connected. Or even the fact that Hoshea took off the guards, it's also connected with being able to come to Jerusalem, come to the temple, similar to coming into Israel, being able to do the pilgrimage. The main thing that happened on Tisha B'Av was the destruction of the temple. This is how we know it. This is what we mourn mostly. We don't really think about the fact that they weren't allowed to go into Israel, or the fact that the people of Beitar were killed, which is also a terrible thing. It's a massacre, but it's not focused on. It's not the main focus of Tisha B'Av. The main focus of Tisha B'Av is the destruction of two temples. And what was the reasons for the destruction also? Not just the destruction themselves, the reasons for the destruction, especially the second temple, which is spoken about at length in the Talmud, is sinat chinam, hate for no good reason. The Jewish people were fighting. There was disagreement and big, very strong disagreement, which resulted in harming each other physically. In the time before the times of the second temple, of the destruction of the second temple. Mm-hmm. And the main thing that caused the destruction was a whole story, how this spoke about it last week, how somebody was thrown out of a party. He hadn't been invited. He thought he was invited. He was thrown out by the head of by the one who was celebrating, and he went to the Roman emperor and basically made a plot in order to cause him to get angry at the Jewish people and to destroy the temple, or to come after the Jewish people in Jerusalem.
That's kind of that's making a big thing into something little.
What happened basically, it was a expression of what was really going on then. What happened was that all of the sages of Jerusalem were at this party, and they were all watching as this guy was thrown out of the party in front of everybody. And none of them said anything, none of them complained or said it's not okay. Mm-hmm. And part of that, the fact that they didn't protest, the fact that they didn't show that they weren't happy with what happened. This was an expression of the fact that the Jewish people were not caring and looking out for each other. Mm-hmm. So we have the destruction itself, and we have the hate which caused the destruction,
which is what we have now.
Yeah. We have to work very, very hard to find the opposite extreme, because when we have extremes, we need other extremes: extreme kindness and extreme love and extreme caring for each other. And that is what happens over here with the 15th of Av, which is that the main place for the Jewish people is the temple. The main thing that happens in the temple is the sacrifices. Like the Rambam says, the mitzvah of building the temple is to build a building, to build a tabernacle, a space where we can offer sacrifices to Hashem and do pilgrimage also, which is part of the celebration. That's an additional thing. The main thing is the sacrifices. The sacrifices bring atonement to the Jewish people for their sins. It makes them reunited and connected with Hashem. The wood that was used for the sacrifices was not the people's individual wood. It was the wood that was cut down by these families of different tribes that would cut down the wood in order to give to others, in order to care for others, in order to give, which was really the highest form of charity.
I'm confused now. What was cut?
The
What?
wood that were cut down, the trees that were cut down in order to use for the sacrifices,
Yeah,
was the biggest form of charity, of tzedakah, because these people put all their effort into the labor of cutting down the wood, and whether it was their wood or the wood that belonged to the public, and they donated it to the temple. They donated it not to the temple. They donated it to the people that were using it for the sacrifices in the temple.
okay,
With this wood, they were able to bring atonement for themselves. They were able to offer the sacrifices.
okay.
Tzedakah is the greatest mitzvah. So tzedakah is compared to all of the mitzvahs, because tzedakah is something that we put our full body into. We put everything into, because when we work for our money, we work hard for it. And also our money keeps us alive, because if we didn't have anything, we could die on the streets. And when we give to somebody else, we're taking everything from ourselves and giving to another person, giving to charity. And this is the greatest mitzvah. Even more so, the highest form of tzedakah, the Rambam says, is when you give without knowing who you're giving to, and the one who takes without knowing who he took from.
Right.
This is what happened over here. They would take the wood, they would cut it down the wood, they would put it into the room in the temple, and then the other people would use it. This was used to bring forgiveness for the Jewish people,
Mhm.
for the sacrifices. So this is the contrast of the hate and the suffering that happened with the destruction of the temple, comes the opposite, which is the celebration of giving, of caring for each other, of caring for each other's highest thing, which is to be atoned for by the sacrifices in the temple. This is also the idea of building the temple. So the temple was destroyed on Tisha B'Av, and here we're rebuilding the temple. The purpose of the whole temple is to offer the sacrifices. So when we cut down the wood and we use it in the temple, we're bringing they're basically being part of rebuilding the temple. Even more so, this is a day which was called the day of the breaking of the scythes. And this is because it says about the altar that they weren't allowed to use metal to cut the stones, the rocks for the altar, the stones for the altar. Why? This is what the Mishnah says, because barzel, metal, iron, was created to shorten people's lives.
To what?
To lekatser yamav shel adam, to shorten lives.
I see.
Iron. It says in the Torah that if somebody by mistake hit somebody else with if somebody hit somebody else with a piece of wood or a piece of stone and they didn't intend to kill them, and they killed them, then if the wood or the stone is too small or to whatever, then they're not liable, because they didn't mean to do such a terrible act. But if they use metal, if you use iron, there's no amount. Any amount of metal can kill someone. Metal is dangerous.
Right.
The altar, on the other hand, by contrast, is created nivra laharich yamav shel adam, to lengthen people's lives. Because through bringing the sacrifices and offering them up on the altar and pleasing God with the smell of the beautiful smell of the sacrifices, we bring blessings to ourselves and blessings to our lives. So the Mishnah says, no metal on the altar. These two things don't go together. This shortens people's lives. This lengthens people's lives. On this, now when metal is needed to cut the wood for the sacrifices, it was needed, like you said, David. But once we no longer need to use it, and it's no longer fulfilling its very great high purpose, which is to rebuild the temple and rebuild the connection between the Jewish people through giving charity and donating to the temple, now the metal is left with no purpose anymore. Now we have to get rid of it. Whether we actually physically get rid of it, according to Rashi and the Rashbam, or it's actually just a day when we call it the day of breaking the scythes, even though they don't actually break it, to bring out this idea that as long as we're using it to fulfill the purpose of building, of connecting, then it's a great thing. Otherwise, get rid of it, out of here. The same thing with destruction in general. And this is the whole idea of the 15th of Av, a day of great unity and a day of great building. So
I'm sorry. Is it?
From the day onwards, we start to add in our Torah study we have longer nights. We can learn more Torah during the evening time. It's a day of adding, a day of growth, and a day of building. Sorry.
Excuse me for interrupting. Is it all metal, or is it just what did you say? Iron.
Barzel is iron. Yeah.
Iron. Okay.
Yeah. And this is also what happened on this day of matchmaking, where they would all go out and they would connect with each other. And not only that, nobody was allowed to bring their own clothing, because then it was the fear that the upper class, richer people would come with their fancy white garments,
Right.
and the poor people would have rags. The poor girls wouldn't be looked at. So it says nobody's allowed to use their own. They all have to borrow from each other, and they all look the same. They all looked similar, and they all
White.
all
I
looked
think
beautiful.
they were supposed to wear white, no?
They were supposed to wear white, but they would share the white from each other. So they all looked beautiful, and it was a day of great unity. And this is how we bring back the suffering and the pain by the suffering and the pain of the destruction of the temple, and all the hate that caused it, by ahavat chinam, by love and giving love, even when we don't know somebody else, even when we don't necessarily have a connection with them. They're in a different class than us, so to speak. Like it speaks about with these girls, some were poor, some were rich, but we share and we look out for all each other, all in the same way. This is what brings the greatest form of unity and peace and rebuilding, which is the idea of the 15th of Av, similar to Yom Kippur, which is a day of atonement and forgiveness and building the tabernacle from then on. Same over here, we rebuild from the 15th of Av, we rebuild the temple, we rebuild the connection between the Jewish people. May it be, God willing, that we should see it with our own eyes. We should, we thank God in America, we have lots of unity between the Jewish people. We could always grow in that. And by doing it between ourselves over here, we have a ripple effect on others around the world, wherever it's needed, to have love and peace and unity between each other.
Thank you.
Wow,
Sure.
it's great.
Yeah.
I learned so much in 45 minutes. Wow.
I missed a lot of details. This is a tractate. When the Rebbe would do a conclusion of a tractate in the Mishnah, everything was brought in. It was like the Talmud and Mishnah. It was like he connects it with the beginning of the tractate, and it's really revolutionary. The Chassidus and the revealed parts of the Torah all brought together in one. So this week I'm going to listen to the Rebbe saying it. This is the one I learned on Shabbat. I'm going to listen to it this week. So maybe next week I'll have an additional shamans for it. I just wanted to say that we're going to be going away. I'll just stop the recording.